I'd like to welcome everybody out today. Thank you for coming to our session. I'm glad to be here too. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about our library and our adventure in starting publishing journals. One of the things we thought about, how hard could it be? At least that's what I was thinking. Recently, the librarians at UCLA did a report study on preprints and archive.org and compared them to the final printed versions in the journals, and they said there was little to no difference. So it says there wasn't that much being done. So how hard could it be? And then we start looking at other faculty doing op-eds saying that there wasn't anything doing by publishers and so forth. So we went into this pretty much wide-eyed and optimistic. One of the things that we were told by our supervisors to never tell anybody no. No matter what they wanted to do or what they wanted to try, the answer was always, we can do that, we'll try to do that, we'll work it out, but never tell anybody no. We promoted the feature of our system, and we were using our IRs called ScholarWorks, and we went to every department in the university and we showed them the system and what it could do. And most importantly, we didn't just show a list of um, articles in a bibliography, because how many faculty have seen a bibliography before? Nothing exciting about that. What we tended to show them were things like the articles in bibliography, but also the photo galleries, streaming media, 3D media, um, events and conferences, research centers, several different things that the IR could do beyond just listing articles that faculty had done. And one of the features that we promoted heavily was the journal management features in bPress's. Um, I just spaced on the name. I'll have it on the next slide. We also promoted on ease of use. Uh, Not only were we able to do all these things, but it was going to be easy for the user, no problem. They'd be able to learn it quickly and do it, and it's going to be great. So everything's sunshine and roses. Then we had a bit of a wake-up call, or I had a bit of a wake-up call because I got the responsibility of the journals, and that was my main focus, and is still to this day my main focus. And where did I get this wake-up call? Well, I started reading Scholarly Kitchen, and I read Kent Anderson's 96 Things Publishers Do, and he's updated that recently to 102 Things Publishers Do. But I read these things, and there's all of these items that I had absolutely no idea how to do. I didn't even know publishers thought about doing these things. These were items that were far beyond my skill set. And so I'm thinking, how in the world am I going to do all of this stuff all by myself? And it was actually very stressful because it was important for us to be seen as professional and knowing what we're doing. We had just rolled out a campus-wide electronic thesis and dissertation project in a year. And to get the university to trust us to handle that kind of thing, to handle something as important as that, we needed to let them know and to show competence and professionalism in all that we do. And that meant the journals as well. So I really was concerned that, are we doing what we need to be doing to be seen as professional and competent in publishing journals? So one of the things that concerned me with trying to do all of this was, how was I going to divide up the load? I decided there was no way that I was going to be able to handle all of these 96 different things. And some of the 96 different things didn't seem to even apply to what we were doing. So I decided that I'd divide it up between several different things. One of them was a digital commons platform, which is what we're using from bPress. We divide some of it with the authors, some with the editors, and also the library as the publisher. What I ended up doing is creating this page here. Oh, and it's not showing up on the screen in the slideshow. What I ended up doing was dividing this between editors, digital commons, library as the publisher, authors, and unassigned items. And as you can see, the lion's share of the work ended up going to the editors. This required a great commitment from the editors. But some of the things that the publishers usually do that the editors had to start doing was basic copy editing. They had to start doing the solicitation for articles more or less on their own. They had to find the niche to for a new journal because I, as a librarian, didn't know the fields, their fields, as well as I did. So we were depending on the faculty in the university to know what fields needed to have journals and what areas and who needed open access journals. There were also a lot of associations that we ended up flipping from subscription to an open access. Now, when I talk about open access, I'm talking about platinum open access because we don't charge author fees at all. The university picks up the tab for bpress, and this is a free service. So there's no charge to the authors or to anyone else for this as well. Digital Commons platform. A lot of the items that the editors, the publisher usually do was handled by that. For instance, versions of an article, handling the reviewers, handling the document through the review process. All of this was handled by the Digital Commons platform. Also, it was able to use to keep up the platform. They did that. It's a hosted service. We didn't have to worry about keeping up our platform for submitting and managing the articles. They added new capabilities to this from a time to time on a regular, actually a rather regular basis that enabled us to keep up with what's the most current. So again, that is something that was listed as the job of the publisher, and I was able to put that into the Digital Commons or the bpresses area of work. And then came the library publisher section. I took all of the ones that were left. Many of these were responsibilities of editors and Digital Commons, and both of us had to work on them. But I also did things like getting ISSN numbers for them, minting DOIs for the journals, getting them into directory of open access journals, looking into maybe putting the education ones into ERIC. Things like that are things that the library took over. And also in go-between between Digital Commons and the editors, taking them by the hand and walking step by step through the various technical processes where they were having problems. One of the great things about the bpress was that their philosophy is if we took more than 15 minutes to work on it, call them. Call them or email them. And they were great. They responded within the day, or they talked to us right there on the phone and walked us through it. So I was very comfortable with leaving some of these responsibilities that normally would go with publishers with them. Authors also had to have additional responsibilities. Things like copy editing and style. Our editors had to be very specific about what their styles they expected and what types of standards they expected as far as copy. And if it didn't meet those standards, it was sent back to be reworked until it did. And that put a little bit more responsibility on the authors than what they're used to having. And there are a few other things that we had authors doing too that they wouldn't normally, that were assigned by Ken Anderson to publishers. And then there's the unassigned section. These were things like human resources. That was the university council, my paycheck, my supervisor, my office, all these things, the infrastructure and the building and the heating, all these other stuff that the publishers have to support and maintain was taken care of by the university. and remained unassigned. Any questions so far? Yes.
So I'm struck by the diligence to go through that entire list and assign every task. But I also know there's very few resources for figuring out what is entailed in publishing. And did you look for and I think that's why the people go to this list. Were there other things that other resources you were able to find that said this is what publishing entails?
Great. And guess what? It's my next slide. Right on the money. All right, let's go back to slideshow. Getting a little help from my friends. Of course, lots of help from B-Press again. They had things about how to promote the journals, how to measure the journal's success. I also was able to participate last year in the SSP mentorship program with Lauren Bianchini. She was at the time with the Public Library of Science. And the important thing there with her was that really helped me was her ability to network. She, of course, was based in San Francisco, was able to come down to San Diego to conferences and stuff, and was able to meet a lot of people that I wouldn't have. How many of you have heard of Nacogdoches, Texas? All right, we got two, three. Oh my goodness, I knew he heard of it. Three have heard of it. How many have actually been there? Middle of nowhere. It's hard to get to and hard to get out of. So we're pretty isolated, and I don't have a lot of chance to network with people. And she was able to set me up with connections that otherwise I never would have been able to get a hold of. The library. I'm surprised in how many librarians don't look in the catalog for a book on what they're working on. It stuns me, and it happens all the time. All I did was look in the library catalog. We had current, latest edition textbooks on how to publish academic journals. I mean, the latest editions, not 1966 or anything like that, 2015. And I don't know who ordered it, but I'm glad they did. And I was able to use those to get a lot of information, and they were very helpful. Going to conferences, listening to how other people are doing things, what they're doing, and that really helped on a couple of levels. One of the levels was that I was able to prepare for a conference, and I had to learn a lot more about whatever it was I was talking about than I ever would have learned if I'd have just done it. But also to be able to measure what other people are doing with what we're doing and how we're measuring up and how we fit into what's happening. Are we keeping up with what other libraries are doing? Should we be doing more? Are we doing more than enough already? This really helped a lot. And so far, we have 10 journals, and I'll show them off to you a little bit here. We have, whoops, let's see if I get this going here. We have 10 journals. Oops, I gotta get rid of my slideshow again. I would say about 5 of them are a going concern. And what I mean by that is that they're going to be sustainable in the long term. They're not floundering or anything. They're getting plenty of submissions. They're getting plenty of the reviews. They're publishing 5 articles per edition at least, and they're going somewhere, and they're going to last. The other 5, not so good. And I haven't figured out why or which is which yet because there's a mix. We have a society who's actually paying us to host theirs, and they're not doing anything with it. We have another society who's getting it for free, and they're going crazy and publishing lots of different things. So it doesn't seem to be any incentive method or motivation that drives one versus the other. that I've been able to figure out. So we've been very happy with these. We have the Index of Texas Archaeology, which is one of our more prolific journals. East Texas Historical Society is very popular. The Journal of Human Services, Training, Research, and Practice. That one has really taken off. I've been really amazed at how that's gone. And they publish on a regular basis with several articles on a very regular basis. And then finally, School Leadership Review. That's the association in Texas of School Leadership Association. And their authors wanted their articles to be received beyond just the association. They were sort of concerned that they were paying and they were working and doing all this effort to publish these articles, and the only people that were seeing it were other members of the association. And we were definitely able to help that with them with that. Now they have a worldwide audience, and it's available to anybody with a cell phone and an internet connection. So that's what I have for you today. Is there any questions or comments or concerns or something I need to answer? Yes.
But what were the primary reasons for your libraries to start considering publishing your own journals?
My boss said so. um, the service that we had, again, through BPress offered that functionality, and we wanted to be able to offer a wide range. We wanted our IR to be owned by the faculty. We wanted to reflect what they wanted and not what we thought it should be. A lot of institutional repositories, they have a set of rules. You can't do this. You can't put that in there. You can't put this in there. And we don't accept these kind of things. We do accept these kind of things. We did not do that at all. We accepted just about everything, and we left it up to the faculty to use judgment and good judgment as much as possible as to what to put in and what it should look like. And it turns out when we started presenting this, I mean, we had these 10 journals. They came up within like a 2-year period of faculty wanting to do these. So it's something that they wanted, and it was driven by the demand. Otherwise, we wouldn't have tried to publish them at all.
Okay, thank you. Do you know any other libraries are doing similar things? Not university presses, but the other independent university libraries.
Several of the BPress libraries do publish things.
Oh.
I'm not sure what their motivations are. From a lot of what I've seen, they're continuing journals that have already existed, which is some of what we've been doing. But again, ours has been heavily faculty driven.
Your articles come from these faculty members? Or?
No, they come from all over the world.
Oh, okay.
The faculty members are just the editorial board.
I'd recommend actually consulting the Library Publishing Directory from the Library Publishing Coalition. They do an annual survey of institutions doing publishing, whether of journals or other things, and it's a standard set of survey questions so that they have a lot of information on even the motivations of those institutions and what they're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Liz Librarian. I'm from Western Michigan University School of Medicine. I'm a librarian. I think what you've done is quite a lot of work. I've had more than once a dean ask me to do this, and I've said, like, with what money and what staff? Because we've had BPress, but it takes a lot of work and effort.
It does.
So just a few questions, and I apologize if I've missed it. So I take it the way you're able to attract authors is your journal is indexed someplace? Your content is being indexed either?
We're working on getting them into indexes. Okay. One of the things that Digital Commons does very well is SEO. And so they're very highly ranked in Google Scholar and Google. And they come at the top of the hit, to the top of the results whenever somebody's searching these things. So that's where a lot of the circulation comes from, or the download metrics. We get a lot of metrics from all of this, of course, too. As far as authors, again, the what I've seen that I think that's been the most successful is the large editorial board, and the chief editor in chief assigns each one of them to talk to someone they know to write an article for the journal. And so the editor in chief may be from our university, but the other editorial boards members could be from anywhere. And they're talking to other faculty and to graduate students and to others to get to these articles. And that seems to have been the most successful model.
I like that there's word of mouth. So we have we've used Bpress on the academic. I'm on the medical campus for a journal that was it's been indexed actually in one of the EBSCO databases. But one of the questions that those librarians kind of deal with is faculty going up for promotion at other institutions that want like impact factor, and their own P&T committee not really understanding this model because it looks a little different. And so I was wondering, how do you deal with that? Because, like I said, in our School of Medicine, we've talked about this, and some of the things that that we look at for P&T. I worry a little bit that that would cause a major investment on our part to make sure that we were indexed, that we were able to come up with an impact factor.
Mm-hmm.
Peer review, what would that look like? You were using your own faculty.
Well, no, the faculty, we weren't necessarily using our own faculty for peer review. Again,
Okay.
just like the editors, the peer reviewers came from anywhere.
Oh, from
And it
okay.
was the editors. See, this is one of the things that was pushed from publishers to the editors. The editors picked the reviewers, and the reviewers could be from anywhere in the world, literally. And also, most of the articles are not from our faculty.
Okay.
So it's not a matter of our faculty. With open access in general, there's a problem with impact factors and getting the credit that it's due and that kind of thing. But all of these 10 are peer reviewed, and they're all peer reviewed. At least they're double blind peer reviewed. All 10 of them
That's
are.
wonderful. That's great. Yeah.
So it's they're all set up specifically like an professional academic journal, and we do that on purpose. We don't accept other types of things. At least we haven't so far.
I think that's an amazing amount of work. One super fast question for you. How much of these journals do you, so the thing that I really struggle with professional graduate students, residents and medical students is to heighten their applications for residency and fellowship. They have to have publications. And so one thought was, we'll create a journal for them, like something very similar to this. They'll get a DOI, they'll have a publication, it'll be peer reviewed, blah, blah, blah. Are you seeing a lot of your students or students in the Texas in your region or in those disciplines be publishing in these journals, or is it mainly people who are I don't want to call them baby doctors. I call my people baby doctors. They're minted doctor, they're minted, they're in the profession and they're actually doing scholarship.
They're the ones that are actually in the profession of doing scholarship. We have tried to get an undergraduate journal started and a graduate journal started. We cannot find faculty member on campus to be in charge of that. Directory of Open Access Journals requires that in order for them to be indexed there. And our goal is ultimately for things to end up there. We haven't had that much luck yet, but that's where we're headed. And nobody has enough time. And so we haven't been able to do that. So we don't have many publications coming from on campus at all. No problem. Anything else?
I suppose you're going to talk about later. So what are the businesses? What's the business model and your university um, pays for everything, right?
University pays for the B Press subscription. I'm not sure what that is right now. It was like 30,000 a year, but I'm not sure what it is because it's gone up since then. But since they pay for it, that's the business model.
Okay, so
Actually, the library pays for it. It comes out of the library's budget.
okay, so only $3,000, but all the everything is like free, like
Yeah,
the free labor.
yeah.
Okay, like in your library, like you're working on it. I don't know how full time or half time, or do you know how many hours the libraries have to put into it?
Oh, probably more than I should.
Okay.
um, there were 4 librarians in our department. I'm the only one left through attrition and retirement. So things have slowed down, and we're not publishing as much as we're not starting as many new journals as we used to, and we're not keeping up with the CVs as fast as we should. But we're trying.
Is this something that you would recommend other libraries to do, or because there are professional publishers out there? So, I mean, it's a great adventure. And other than that, can I say it's a vanity project for the faculty members?
No, it's not again, we don't have that many faculty members on our campus that are doing this, that are publishing in these. Now they are the editors,
Yeah, I mean,
and that's
for
part of the requirements for BPress. We can't just randomly host journals from everywhere. We have to, they have to be associated with our university somehow. Uh, I haven't seen anything that is, at least anything that has been sustainable
yeah.
that would be considered a Vanity Press type project. All the ones that have actually, the 5 that have actually got staying power are very serious journals, and I expect that trend to continue.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, one more, and then I've got to turn the time over.
The 5 that are doing well, if a commercial publisher ever approached you and said, "Hey, you're onto something. We want to take this over," what would be the sentiment?
I would talk to the editors and ask what they wanted. Um, I would recommend no because we're doing an open access model. The author doesn't pay, and the subscribers don't pay, and we wouldn't want to put them behind a paywall of some sort, on either side of the equation. So, but it would be ultimately up to the editors. And actually, for the associations, like I said, they flipped. They had a publisher doing it for them, and they've gone to us because they've been able to get a greater reach and a better return for what they're doing. All right, thank you.
So, of course, our topic today is trial and error in library publishing, right? Successes and difficulties. So Phil, of course, started us off with a discussion of a journal publishing service at his institution. I'm going to speak about a book publishing service in our library program. We also do a bit of journal hosting, but I'm going to talk about this service in particular. And then our third speaker, we're going to show you a video in a bit of a program focused on open educational resources at a third institution. So in June 2015, the University of North Texas Libraries launched a for-fee service, now known as Aquiline Books, for publishing works of scholarship from authors affiliated with the university. Authors can choose from a menu of editing and design options, and all publications are made free to read online through the institutional repository. So first, I want to summarize the decisions that I made when designing the publishing service, including those particular points I just mentioned, and explain our menu of editing and design options. And then I'll talk about which of those menu items have proven to be popular and which haven't, right? So in some ways, a sort of trial and error here. So UNT already has a university press, and I didn't want to duplicate or compete with that operation. So instead, Aquiline Books was meant to complement it. Conventional publishers, including university presses, invest in a product up front and attempt to recover their costs through sales and subscriptions in most cases. Of course, there's some open access models, right, like APCs, slightly differently. For book publishing, it often works this way. But Aqualine Books was designed to be lean enough that the cost to publish could be covered entirely upfront, freeing the libraries from the constraints of these business models that attempt to recover that investment through sales of print or digital copies. University presses, of course, specialize in certain disciplines. They know how to market to the audience in that area. And in the case of monographs, they know the field well enough to manage a peer review process and to have a sense of which manuscripts they receive are worth sending out for review and which will sell enough copies to recover their costs. With Aqualine Books, on the other hand, we publish works in any discipline. But Aqualine Books authors have to be affiliated with UNT, so similar to the requirement at Stephen F. Austin State University. Not all library publishing programs work this way, though many do require some sort of affiliation or connection to the institution. But instead of conducting peer review, we actually use the author's affiliation as their credential for publishing. Right, so if the institution invested in that person by hiring them, then that means that they're a serious enough researcher that it's worth the institution through the library ensuring that the results of their research find a way out there. So to synthesize these three last points, I wanted to offer a service to the whole campus rather than choosing to publish only in certain disciplines, much like how academic libraries serve the whole campus in general. At the same time, I felt that I couldn't possibly find appropriate peer reviewers for any manuscript that might come my way. So instead of conducting peer review, I require authors to be affiliated with the university. So this distinguishes Aqualine Books from a vanity press, of course, which is also associated with the author pays model, but which allows any paying customer to be an author. And then to connect this back to the first distinction between a university press and Aqualine Books, in order to serve all disciplines, I'm not in a position to predict which products to invest in, as a conventional publisher would. Instead, if the author pays the costs up front, I won't have to make those decisions. But there's actually more to how Aqualine Books differs from conventional scholarly publishing. So conventional scholarly publishers are concerned with their reputation among potential authors and customers, so they spend resources on each manuscript they accept to make sure that it gets the full standard treatment for editing, design, dissemination, and marketing. In Aqualine Books, the author chooses the level of editing and design they want. So if getting the work out to the public quickly is more important than it being perfectly polished, we can help make that happen. So besides being affiliated with UNT, there are two other requirements for publishing with Aqualine Books. You have to have produced a work of scholarship, which I define quite loosely, but this isn't for memoirs and fan fiction and things like that. And you have to be willing to make the final version free to read online. So I deliberately don't really use the term open access here because some scholars think of this as meaning that anybody can get published however they want without proper peer review, and I don't want to risk distracting them with this term when discussing this service. I do encourage authors to use Creative Commons licenses, but I don't require it. You just have to make it free to read. When setting up the service, I considered how to deliver these publications online, specifically whether to make them available through UNT's institutional repository or through another platform with kind of richer functionality, something maybe a bit more kind of web native. But I went with the institutional repository in the end because I couldn't think of any essential feature needed for publishing these books that was missing from our institutional repository. So our IR just serves up page images and full PDFs if you want to download it in that way, but it doesn't offer hypertext or embedded multimedia or anything like that. It wasn't really clear to me that any potential authors would end up requiring such features. And I've kept the door open to potential projects that would require these sort of webby features that might not work in our institutional repository. But in the years since founding this, no one has expressed interest in those features. So we've been just fine with the institutional repository. Okay, so the cost to publish varies by project according to a menu of fees, which can be paid using research funds, grants, or other sources of funding. So before I talk about the fee structure, of course, you're probably wondering how I was going to manage to get anyone at the University of North Texas to publish with me if there's no peer review, right? We just touched on this a little bit in our discussion of Phil's presentation. So I've expected with this service to be publishing things like festschrifts for retiring faculty members, selected papers from conferences that happen on campus, maybe a faculty member's sort of pet project that was never picked up by a conventional publisher, or faculty members out of print title for which the rights are reverted to the author and they want to put back into print or in broader circulation. And any other projects that have kind of a special institutional subsidy. Right, so these are the sorts of things that university presses sometimes get asked to publish coming from their own home institution, but which they generally can't afford to do, right? Because they're just not going to help recover costs, right? They're just not broadly marketable enough. So, again, UNT has a university press, and our press is very glad that the libraries provides this sort of alternative institutional brand for potential publications. They refer these projects to me, right? They come to them that sort of just don't fit them, but what people really want in the end is the institutional brand on it, whether it says University of North Texas Press on the title page is in the end less important to them. And I do sometimes send things to them as well when we're having a kind of general discussion about publishing and academic publishing options and what might be appropriate. So I have a very good working relationship with our press. Okay, so here's a diagram designed to make the menu of fees that I have easier to understand. There's a minimal fee, the sort of blue box at the bottom, to make the work free to read online, and then there are various add-on fees for additional services. Most of the services here are carried out by freelancers and vendors that have joined my roster. So I contract with these. They perform this work. So the author pays the institution. I, in turn, pay the vendors to do this work. So how much do each of these services cost? Well, of course, it varies. And what I provide on the Aqualand Books website is a spreadsheet that potential authors can download and sort of fill out to derive an estimate. Basically, it's based on word count and you marking each of these services yes or no. Very rough estimate. We can't really know the exact cost in advance anyway because when I have a particular project, I ask freelancers and vendors to bid on it, and their exact price is, of course, going to vary. I just have a sense of what the going rates are and use that in the spreadsheet. So I charge authors exactly what the freelancers charge me without any overhead that would be covering my salary or other indirect costs here. That'd be very difficult to calculate, given that I have other job duties besides running this service. So, even though I don't end up charging authors the full true cost of publishing, including representing all of that overhead, I hope to make them more aware of the actual costs involved in publishing, because it's quite transparent here, right? If copy editing is going to cost, $637, they're going to know exactly what it costs here. So I really just want to make them, more aware of some of these actual costs and how the cost can vary depending on the amount of effort involved in creating the product, right? I want this to, it's a bit of an educational moment as well. Okay, so what have authors chosen from the menu of services? So here I've listed the 7 book projects that are far enough along to discuss. I've got another one in the works right now. So, I said this started in 2015, right? So 7 books. This is not a lot, This is not a high volume operation. I don't really expect it's ever going to pick up that much. I'm really looking to address unmet needs here, kind of fill in the gaps in the system. I admitted the very first publication I did, actually, the UNT Press handed it over to me late in the production process, so we didn't go through the typical sort of set of deciding on exact services in my model. And I also admitted 5 out-of-print titles by UNT authors that we reissued thanks to grant funding. So as you can see here, hopefully visible well enough from the back, nobody has been interested in the in-depth editing services, developmental editing or substantive editing, nor in fact and citation verification, or in getting help sorting through permissions. So those things haven't come up with these projects yet, though the one in the works may involve some permissions checking. About half of the authors wanted just mechanical editing, right? So sort of spelling, style, usage. And the others felt that their content was polished enough not to require any editing. Of course, I know better, which is why I forced the editors to pay for at least light proofreading, right? Everyone thinks their work is perfect and they've been over it 20 times, and we always find new things. So that's a minimum. You basically have to do that as part of the online publishing fee. So everyone wanted to pay for a designer to lay out the work in a PDF suitable for printing. So everyone has opted into that option. Though strictly speaking, I would take a Word document and just turn it into a PDF with whatever messy formatting it had and put it online. If somebody didn't want to pay for that, I'd be willing to do that. None of them asked about ebook file formats, but I have those created anyway by the freelancer vendor designers who are doing PDFs because, the add-on cost of that work is pretty small these days, right? It's built into InDesign, and vendors often have it as part of their workflow, and I just figure it's good for them. So we produce those ebook files anyway. Only one of my authors wanted an index. The others felt it was unnecessary, especially given there would be an online version with full text searching available, right? So they felt that that was going to be good enough. It was certainly something we had discussed ahead of time. That well, if full text searching is good enough, then maybe it's not worth paying for an index. About half of them wanted me to arrange for a one-time print run of their work. So that's kind of reflected in the column labeled print setup. But the others arranged their own printing through Amazon, was then called CreateSpace. Now it's part of Kindle Direct Publishing. I do offer other options to people, right, saying, well, you don't have to work with Amazon, but so far the people I've talked to have all been fine with using the Walmart of the publishing industry. 4 paid for a custom cover design. Of the remaining 3, 1 had a cloth-only cover, so that just didn't apply. They chose to do cloth binding. And then 1 had her sister design the cover, and 1 designed his own cover. So that's that. It's not really my favorite usually. I kind of prefer that we do there, get someone professional, but I'm all about giving people rope to hang themselves with. So I usually don't say that to them. Anyway, so that's what I have so far. So maybe we'll do also questions from my presentation before we show you our video of our third presenter.
I'm sorry to ask so many questions, but I'm from IEEE, a publisher.
Yep.
So I think it's great as a personal hobby, but it does look like a mockery of professional publishing. So like these people, can they send their books to Amazon Books or the other free service? How much are they paying for this?
Well, it depends which services they opt into, right, out of the set. But I would say people generally paid me for editing and production. It's usually somewhere in the range of like $700 to $1,500. And then if they're doing maybe a one-time print run, because they're just handing out copies and not selling, okay, whatever, a couple hundred more. But otherwise, they're probably setting it up through print on demand, and such as through Amazon. So then anyone can go on Amazon and buy it, right? Well, that doesn't really cost anything up front. Anyone can log in, create an account, set up a book, and then people just buy copies.
So what's labeled as a publisher of this book?
So with the online version, it says the University of North Texas Libraries is the publisher. Now, because I have the authors use Kindle Direct Publishing on their own directly, I don't want to be in the middle of that, right? They get the royalties because they paid me all the costs up front. I don't need any more money. So I give them the final files from the designer and say, here, go here and set it up through Amazon or through, Ingram Spark or whatever, any of these other things. So when you use Amazon's Kindle service, I think the publisher name on there actually says Amazon or something weird, but that's like an Amazon rule. As far as I'm concerned, the University Libraries is the publisher.
So your university library gives your branding to a completely peer-reviewed process. But I guess the condition is that this person should be employed by the university.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of skim every project that comes in, right? Certainly if it raises red flags, I would have a discussion. But I'm not reviewing them closely.
I'm not sure anybody else from any of the publishing houses have a comment.
Thanks. My name is Tim Elfenbein, and my experience in this is I worked with a scholarly society who left its publishing deal and set up a journal that they published themselves.
Okay.
And so went through a similar process. And so part of the question that you slightly addressed was your relationship with the press. In a sense, figuring out what was the niche that would make sense for you to tackle.
Yep.
And so I'm interested to hear those kinds of conversations and how the press engaged in those conversations.
Yep.
The second question is, I don't know, a meta question, which is much more less about the product that comes out, but how has becoming a small publisher changed your understanding of publishers and publishing that you deal with in the rest of your world as a librarian?
Okay, so on the first question, the press has been happy to turn over those projects to me that come to them usually with some institutional connection, but which aren't really commercially viable, right? These ones where they're having awkward conversations but don't want to do it and want to turn it over to me. I think you have I mean, I can give some examples, but I think you know kind of what I imagine, right? So they're happy to give them to me, and then it's good that the person is happy that they find a way for institutional tie for it. But some projects have gone back. We had some discussions with our law school in Dallas, and they wanted to do this sort of textbook, and they were kind of interested in working with me as well. And the press, at first we thought maybe not because they don't do anything like this, but the press also saw the commercial value, and they said, we'll start up this sort of new series with the law school, and it's worked out very well for them. So again, things go back and forth. I don't have any vested interest in how many books get published in this service. So like, if it works with me, great. But if not, let's go somewhere else. Like, I don't need to build this service. Luckily, no one's asking me to churn out X number of titles per year, that kind of thing. In the rest of my work, I run our scholarly communication office. So of course, I'm looking at the system holistically. I can't say that I'm otherwise working with publishers in a substantial way. I'm not in our collection development or acquisitions area, for example. So I'm not having like negotiations with publishers or something like that. I'm not sure that this has changed things too much. My career's been working at the intersection of academic publishing and libraries. I was at the University of Michigan Press and libraries, so like I'm in this world anyway. So I don't know that I've learned that much.
I'll let you go, and then I'll ask my question. Sorry.
Hi, so my name is Marissa Kors. I'm a book editor at Wiley Blackwell. My question is maybe a little bit of a technical one, but it's for those titles that you're reissuing which are out of print. You said that you're doing that because the rights have reverted to the author. Do you have a vetting process for checking that those rights are actually held by the author and have been fully legally reverted? Is that something that you check in every case?
Oh yeah.
And is that so you just personally do that?
Right. So, ideally, the author would just hand me the document showing it, but
Okay.
the authors usually don't understand exactly what to do and where to go. So usually I start the conversation by contacting the publisher's rights department and say, hey, I know this author at an institution whose work is out of print. We're trying to figure who owns the rights right now. Could you investigate, right?
Okay. And so then you are facilitating that relationship kind of in the role of publisher, checking the rights and maintaining.
Right. I mean, for all works, I need documentation of all the rights. So even when someone publishes a brand new work, if we have embedded content in it, right, I want documentation of that because, if 5 years later someone comes challenging it, right, and the author signed something and said I've cleared all rights, well, now how do I adjudicate, right? So I want all that documentation up front.
Now, and just a quick follow-up question. You said you got grant funding to do the reissuing?
Yeah.
Which grant specifically?
So the National Endowment for the Humanities, NEH, and the Mellon Foundation ran a program for a number of years called Humanities Open Books, which was designed to bring out of print works in the humanities back into circulation. And so we received one of those grants. We did a whole bunch of books relating to Texas and Oklahoma history, but I had a set of it, which was 5 books to be determined, which would be out of print works by UNT faculty, right? And so I found 5, exactly 5, and did those. Yep.
Thank you.
So I think it's really neat what you're doing, and so we don't offer that service right now at our school, but we have piggybacked on a different school in Michigan because our emergency medicine department creates content, and they do it quite rapidly, and they find working with the publisher it's a little bit too slow. So from when you get content to when you publish it, I'm just kind of curious what your turnaround is, because
it varies. I mean, it depends how much of a hurry the author's in, and some of them are more responsive than others, right? So certainly one of the early discussions we have is like, okay, when are you going to get me the final version to send off for editing, right? And then what's your schedule look like over the next few months, right? When do you want this to come back? Should we time this to fall during spring break, during this, that, right? Do you have a target of having this ready in time for some conference where you're going to hand out copies? So we work that out. But I'd say, I think within 6 months, we can do all this. We can do usually 1 round of editing and a layout, and maybe there's page proofs and corrections, but I think 6 months tends to do it.
And then so I've taught them about the Creative Commons license. do you help out with selecting one of those licenses?
Yeah, yep. Always happy to have that discussion with people.
And do you recommend one over another, or just say, here's the menu?
No, we talk through it. I generally recommend against the share alike licenses because of the difficulties of recombining content later. I gently recommend against the non-commercial ones because of the unintended consequences that tend to arise from that. But a lot of people prefer it philosophically, so I'm not going to push too hard on that one. The no derivatives one I think is a fairly straightforward conversation generally, but I do try to talk about things you might not have thought of. Well, what if somebody wants to take a chapter from this and include it in a new course back? Do you want them to have to ask for permission for that? Well, if not, maybe you should allow derivative works. So yeah, I talk to those kinds of things.
Thank you.
You're right. One more back there.
Hi, I'm Nicole Ridgway from the American Psychological Association. I wanted to ask, what type of marketing support do you provide authors, and are there ideas that you think publishers could leverage to better market our content to faculty, research, authors?
So I don't really provide any marketing support. My thinking is that the authors know best how to reach their peers through things like email discussion lists they're already on. I realize it's like slightly uncouth to go promoting your own work, but people do it in various ways anyway. So it doesn't seem to me like a totally brand new thing. So I don't really do that. I mean, there are some guides out there. So for example, the folks at Michigan Publishing, Library Publishing Operation there, do have like a sort of author marketing guide. Well, it might be for authors, it might be for journal editors, or the journal hosting service, but it talks a bit about some things to think through there. I think there are some resources. So if people ask me for that, I would point them to it. But to be honest, nobody has been too worried about that. I think our SEO is also pretty good, so things are somewhat discoverable. They seem mostly concerned that you could find it in Amazon to buy it. This seems to be what people are most thinking about. I mean, maybe it's just that authors don't think about these things seriously, right? And if I were interested in engaging them more in this discussion, it might lead to more things, but I just don't. I kind of let it go. All right. Well, I definitely want to make sure we have some time to watch the video of our third speaker as well. So maybe we should do that now, and certainly then at the end, if we have any synthesizing discussion, we can do that as well here. So here, while I'm here, I think I can just start this up.
Hi, I'm Kathy S. Miller. I'm the Open Educational Resources Librarian at Oklahoma State University, and I've been asked to share with you some of the experiences that we've had with library publishing from the perspective of open educational resources. One of the first things we had to kind of really address were questions about the boundaries in our structure. Who are our stakeholders? What is our audience? What's our goal with this particular branch of library publishing? We realize we don't really consider ourselves a publisher. We just are wanting to share the work of our faculty and instructors with other people, and also give our faculty and instructors a way to interact with the creations of other scholars around the world. We want to encourage people to publish for scholarly and non-scholarly audiences. And some of the questions we looked at are we verifying credibility? So that's one of the things that we've had to kind of explore. When you're publishing things into the commons and you're interacting with the values of the commons, which are different perhaps than market values and government values, to what extent do you verify credibility, and what are the metrics you use to establish credibility? So those are some of the things we're kind of exploring and wrestling with. What does peer review look like for things that are in the commons, especially when you're trying to elevate marginalized voices and maybe step away a little bit from the established structure and hierarchy and of higher ed and some of the people that puts in the margins and keeps from really being able to have a voice. So we also have questions about what our scope is. Where are we positioning ourselves? For a while, we published our OER through our library ePress, but hosting that locally, we found we're limited in what formats we could publish the work in. We could, publish it as a PDF or maybe one or two other formats, but we couldn't offer the accessibility that we really wanted to offer. Additionally, since on the ePress we were mostly publishing things as PDFs, their ability to step into the commons and be modified and reused was limited. And people could email us and ask for the Word file, and that certainly is something that happened, and we were willing to share. But we wanted to find a platform that would make it even easier for others to interact with the brilliant work that our faculty are doing. And so we basically are trying to figure out what's the best way to get what we do, what our stakeholders, what the great people at Oklahoma State University are accomplishing. How do we get that out to other people? We do still that we want it to be rigorous. We still want it to be serious. We just wanted to maybe have fewer rules and boundaries than we might have if we were operating under the strictures of a university press. And we wanted to have broader accessibility than we could provide through just our ePress functionality. We wanted to give people the opportunity to publish textbooks, but also other educational resources, and create interactive tutorials and educational experiences. We also like to have a place where we can house syllabi that's different than our institutional repository or Share OK, where but people can go there and download the things, but we kind of wanted them to be able to view them online, as well as interact with them in several different file forms. So our challenge is kind of bringing all those questions into conversation with each other, getting all together and starting the dialogue and figuring out our identity and exactly what we wanted to do. And so once we determined our mission and our goals, then we were able to start a dialogue with our instructors and communicate with them about the services that we wanted to offer and how we wanted to make them available. And say these are our values, and then we hope the authors will come to us and let us work with them. So we've ended up adopting an institutional version of Pressbooks, which is a digital publishing platform kind of built on WordPress. And I don't know, it's hard to I'm not there. I'm sure you all already know this, but those who've interacted with WordPress itself will have a fairly easy time interacting with Pressbooks. We were able to brand the site, and some of the strengths that we found of using Pressbooks include the ability to easily clone other textbooks that are in Pressbooks from other institutions, as well as offering them the opportunity to clone the work of our professors as well. And then once it's in either platform, then you can adapt it, you can change it, modify it, to localize it for use at your own particular university. We appreciate that they've already built in a lot of accessibility features. They fight a lot of the battles we don't need to fight. They keep track of stuff, and it's already optimized right there on their site. And the fact that we can publish it in so many different formats, so it can be consumed and interacted with cross-platforms on several devices, as well as still printed off in PDF form, or even ordered through the bookstore or whatever, for those folks who want the hardbound book. So that's a little bit about the platform that we use, the digital tools, the digital resources. We also, I guess, we're addressing the people and the resources we rely on as well. And we have built a team that includes me, the OER librarian. We also are fortunate to have been able to hire a graduate research associate, and then we also have an intern position that are with us through the summer, and they're helping us with a lot of the nuts and bolts, the copy editing, how do you create, creating a cover for it, working with the authors to make sure we've got their files. We also, as part of our publishing team, we have an instructional designer here at the library, and part of her time is dedicated to helping develop and design these resources. Our scholarly services librarian, of course, it plays a big role in cultivating relationships with faculty and letting them know that this is there. This is one of the ways to get their scholarship out, and then addressing the copyright issues and some of those other questions that we have. And then our associate dean is very involved as well as a stakeholder and getting funding and then supporting us with the time and the resources that we need to do it. Now, some of the things we're discovering that we need to learn along the way have to do with the copy editing and the process, and how long does it actually take to make a book, right? So when I first started with this, I came at it, I'm a K-12 teacher, and I have about 15 years of classroom experience, and from the arts education, and we're mostly creating our own resources anyway. And so I just kind of envisioned textbook creation as being something along the lines of what we're doing. So as we've gotten into it, we've discovered, as many of you already knew, how much more complex it is, and the different levels and areas and times that it takes to copy edit, the fact that you should really count on 3 years for a book to get from conceptualization to publication. So those workflows are what we're working to kind of understand and establish. So I guess if I were speaking to an audience of established publishers, I would say, wow, you know what you're doing. It's an art, it's a science, and kudos. And it's hard. And if I'm speaking to folks hoping to step into publishing, I would say, okay, there's a lot more to it than it looks. There's a reason maybe we pay publishers, as well as the marketing and some of those other things that we haven't really even started to address and figure out. So those are a lot of the questions. How do you establish a workflow? How do you, and then rolled up in that is asking the questions of, well, okay, why would we relearn and approximate some of these jobs, skills, tasks, talents when there are already people that can do it? Well, for us, the answer is we want to eliminate some of the barriers. We want to break down some of the structure that's maybe in place. We want to provide localized, affordable educational opportunities for our students. And part of what that involves is me kind of figuring out how to do some of this, and me figuring out how to optimize a workflow, and our identifying as Open OK State exactly what our values are and what our mission is, and making sure that everything we do is in line with that. So I guess in a nutshell, and thank you for watching this video, and I'm so sorry I'm not there in person. I'm missing out on so much, and I know it, but my email is kathy.smiller@okstate.edu, and I imagine that's somewhere in my profile. Feel free to reach out to me to either tell me how to do my job or ask me more questions. I hope you're all having a great conference, and I look forward to meeting y'all later. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Well, we have actually run a bit over time, so do you think we should just call it there, Phil?
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Questions?
Yeah. All right, thanks very much.